Well, ladies and gentlemen, it would appear as if Germany just took one giant step closer towards becoming an all-out totalitarian police state. And no, I'm not kidding. Now, before you roll your eyes and say, oh, come on, that's just Europe being Europe, listen to what actually happened. Because if you're an America First supporter, if you're someone who believes in national sovereignty, this story is going to feel very familiar. So here's how Germany works politically. They've got a bunch of different political parties, and they all compete for seats in what's called the Bundestag, which is basically their version of Congress. And so one of these parties, the second biggest party in the country actually, is called AfD, Alternative for Deutschland. And they're essentially Germany's version of the MAGA movement. Their biggest political position? Pretty simple. Deport illegal immigrants. Imagine that, a country deciding that it doesn't want to be overrun by people who broke the law to enter it. Sound familiar? Now, naturally, this has driven the progressive establishment in Germany and the European Union completely insane. They've spent years trying to paint the AfD as the second coming of Adolf Hitler, just like the American progressive left has tried to do here in America with President Trump. But yesterday, things over in Germany escalated in a way that should really concern everyone around the world who believes in the concept of representative democracy. So folks, take a look at this, then we're going to have a lot to talk about.
You a little bit of breaking news coming into us from Germany. The Reuters news agency is reporting that the country's domestic intelligence agency has classified the Alternative for Germany party as an extremist entity that threatens democracy, a move that enables it to better monitor the party, which came second, of course, in February's federal election. Now, they go on to say that certain factions of the AfD, such as its youth wing, have already been classified as extremists, but the party at large was also classified as a suspected extremist case in 2021. But now the Domestic Intelligence Agency in Germany is classifying the AfD as an extremist entity that threatens democracy.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. A major political party that just took second place in a national election, winning over 20% of the votes nationwide, has now been labeled an extremist organization by Germany's domestic intelligence agency. And so let's be very clear about what this actually is, a calculated move by Germany's ruling progressive elite to silence their more conservative political opposition. And it's exactly what the deep state has done here in America to President Trump, to MAGA, to the America First movement, and to anyone who refuses to worship at the altar of progressive globalism. If you threaten the progressive globalist system, the progressive globalist system is going to call you a threat to democracy. That's just what they do. Now, I want you all to take a look at what Vice President J.D. Vance had to say about a month ago about what's been going on over there in Germany. But first, I do want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, take a look at this.
I really believe that we have a great deal in common with Europe. And I'm not, yes, the Europeans annoy me sometimes, and yes, I disagree with them on certain issues, but we have to remember that is the cradle of Western civilization. The entire idea of Christian civilization that led to the founding of the United States of America, that was formed in Europe. The cultural bonds, the religious bonds, these things are going to last beyond political disagreements, but I think that Europe, and frankly, I would have said this about America a year ago, but Europe is at risk, I think, of engaging in civilizational suicide. They are unable to, or unwilling, too many countries to control their borders. You see them starting to push back against that, and good, that's a good thing. You see them starting to limit the free speech of their own citizens, even as those citizens are protesting against things like the border invasion that got Donald Trump and a number of European leaders elected. So look, I want Europe to thrive. I want them to be an important ally. Part of that is going to be Europe respecting its own people, respecting its own sovereignty, and America can't do that job for them. If you have a country like Germany, where you have another few million immigrants come in from countries that are totally culturally incompatible with Germany, then it doesn't matter what I think about Europe. Germany will have killed itself, and I hope they don't do that because I love Germany and I want Germany to thrive.
And so, folks, as it would turn out, Germany has decided to do the exact opposite of what JD Vance suggested. Germany didn't just decide to ignore the people. No, now they're actively punishing them and calling over 20% of the country extremist threats to democracy. What we're seeing in Germany is out of the very same playbook we've seen from the progressive left here in America. Flood the country with migrants, ignore the cultural consequences, and when voters start to push back, brand them as extremists. When in truth, the only extreme thing the AfD party in Germany is really guilty of is spreading the truth about Germany's crumbling economy and their out-of-control immigration problem. Sound familiar? That's because it's the very same garbage that they've tried to pull here in America, obsessing over violent MAGA extremists. Meanwhile, our border was collapsing and fentanyl was flooding into our streets. But guess what? Luckily, political leaders here in the United States are speaking out against this very clear subversion of democracy going on in Germany. In fact, take a look at what Secretary of State Marco Rubio had to say about all of this just yesterday afternoon. Germany just gave its spy agency new powers to surveil the opposition. That's not democracy, it's tyranny in disguise. What is truly extremist is not the popular AfD, which took second in the recent election, but rather the establishment's deadly open border immigration policies that the AfD opposes. Germany should reverse course. And ladies and gentlemen, Marco Rubio is absolutely correct. The idea that a major opposition party needs to be spied on by the state, that's not democratic, that is Orwellian. But you know what? Check this out. Germany's Foreign Office actually directly responded to Marco Rubio saying this: "This is democracy. This decision is the result of a thorough and independent investigation to protect our Constitution and the rule of law. We've learned from our history that right-wing extremism needs to be stopped." Okay, so let me make sure that I'm getting all of this straight. Wanting to protect your borders and preserve your culture from millions of culturally incompatible immigrants from the third world means you're a right-wing extremist now? If that's the definition of extremism, then I think like 99% of people in the world are also extremists. But you know what? Let's just cut the nonsense here. If a government gets to decide which political beliefs are allowed and which political beliefs aren't allowed, that's not a democracy, that is a totalitarian regime. And by the way, if you think this is just a European problem or just a German problem, think again. Everything they're doing to AfD in Germany is what the Democrats want to do here in America to the America First movement. If they could get away with it, they'd throw every single Donald Trump voter in a prison cell. Hell, we've already seen them try to do it. Really, this goes deeper than just immigration or even elections. At its core, this is about whether or not nations have a right to exist, whether people have the right to preserve their identity, culture, and national sovereignty in the face of an elite that wants to erase all of it. So when you hear the left-wing media start throwing around terms like extremist and threat to democracy, ask yourself this: who actually gets to decide what's extreme? Because if defending your country's borders is now extreme, if standing up for your people makes you an extremist, then you know what? Maybe the real extremists are the ones throwing those labels around in the first place. But now, folks, here's the truth. All of this going on in Germany is a perfect reminder of why we all here in America voted for Donald Trump. Because now it is time for us to put America first. Now, folks, before we wrap up with today's video, I want to say real quick that I've actually gone ahead and made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and updates as it relates to all of this. So if you guys use Facebook, check out the pinned comment down below and give that page a follow. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there. As I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton with my daily struggle here on YouTube. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.